Chosen one. They thought they buried you, but they actually planted you in the very soil of your own victory. The opposition made a fatal mistake by targeting you, and now the spiritual consequences are absolute. The ancestors said they're as good as dead for this stunt they pulled. This is a revelation of your sovereignty. You are rising while they face the unstoppable weight of ancestral justice. You were born carrying something. You felt it even if you couldn't name it. There was always something about you that was different, something that set you apart in a way you couldn't always explain. Some people loved you immediately, drawn to your energy without knowing exactly why. Other people who had no logical reason to be threatened by you, watched you differently. They watched you not in admiration but in calculation. You were young when it started. Let that land. You hadn't done anything to anyone yet. You hadn't built anything. You hadn't claimed anything. And already there were people positioning themselves against you. Already there were eyes on your potential, deciding it made them uncomfortable, deciding it needed to be managed, deciding it needed to be contained before it grew into something they couldn't control. Most people would call that experience victimhood, but that framing is wrong, because what you just described is not a record of damage. It is the origin of a chosen one. Every significant figure in history had opposition that showed up before the greatness was even visible. The opposition is not proof that you are weak. The opposition is the first confirmation that you carry something worth fighting over. They saw what was in you before you fully saw it in yourself, and instead of honoring it, they decided to fight it. That was their first mistake. You were born into a lineage with wealth written into it, and not just financial wealth. Your lineage carries generational gifts, a specific kind of intelligence, a specific kind of spiritual authority, and a specific way of moving through the world that, when fully activated, produces results that cannot be denied. Someone in your immediate world understood that trajectory. Someone did the math on who you were going to become, and they decided the answer was unacceptable to them, so they started early, and they started close, because they weren't strangers, they had access. Here is the first revelation. Breathe through it. The people working against you were not outside your circle, they were inside it. They were people you shared meals with, people you trusted, people you called family, people who sat at the same gatherings as you, smiled in your direction, and quietly invested in making sure you never fully arrived at what was destined for you. Jealousy from a stranger is something you can shake off, but jealousy from someone who called themselves family, someone who was supposed to be rooting for you, someone who was supposed to be a safe presence in your life, that is a different kind of wound. That kind goes to the root of you. You did not want to believe it. Every time something felt wrong, every time your gut was telling you that a situation did not add up, you explained it away. You explained it away because you loved them, because you had history with them, because you stayed loyal in a way they never were. Your loyalty was used against you. Your love was weaponized. The very depth of your commitment to people became the blind spot they exploited. They knew it. They counted on it. Here is what you need to hold on to, though. That same loyalty, the one that made you vulnerable, is the same quality that made you someone your lineage could trust to carry something sacred forward. Only someone with that depth of commitment could endure what you endured without becoming cold, without becoming the very thing that came against you. That loyalty is not a flaw, it was always a feature of who you are, and it is part of why you are still standing. It was not just one person who came against you. A jealous parental figure was part of it. A jealous blood relative was part of it. Someone from your community who wore the mask of support while working against you in private was part of it. These people found each other through their shared resentment of what you carry. They compared notes. They kept each other's bitterness alive. They collectively decided that engineering your downfall was their shared mission, and they were not passive about it. This was not silent wishing for your failure. This was active, coordinated effort, with real time and real energy being poured into blocking, delaying, rerouting, and if possible, outright stealing what was destined to reach you. They targeted your finances so that every time things moved towards stability, something interrupted the momentum. They targeted your relationships so that every time something good was forming, interference appeared. They even went after the next generation because they understood that your legacy was not just about you, it was about everything you were going to pass down. And if they could not stop you directly, they calculated that maybe they could corrupt the inheritance behind you. That is the level of what you were up against. This is the moment you stop calling it bad luck. You are not crazy. You were not imagining patterns. The setbacks that felt too specific to be coincidental were not coincidental. All of it was real, and you now have the confirmation you have always deserved. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. You kept going. With all of that working against you, with that much coordinated energy aimed at your failure, with that many people pulling at the foundation of your life from inside your own circle, you kept moving, you kept building, you stayed disciplined when you had every reason to fall apart. You stayed driven when your environment was giving you nothing but resistance. That persistence is not simply a personality trait, it is your lineage activating inside you. It is something your ancestors deposited in you before you ever arrived, something that functions on a level deeper than conscious thought. When everything in your environment said stop, something in your blood said keep going, and you listened. You might not have known exactly why, but you listened, and while you were grinding, while you were persevering through things that would have ended most people, something else was happening in the background, something you could not see, and something the people working against you definitely could not see. Your protection was activating. Every time something was sent your way, something else met it before it could land fully. Every close call you chalked up to coincidence was not coincidence. Every situation that was clearly designed to devastate you but somehow didn't land the way it was intended, that was your lineage doing what lineages do for their chosen ones. That was your ancestors saying, not this one. That was divine backing operating in ways the human eye cannot track but the human heart can absolutely feel. And the deeper truth you need to receive is this: the more the opposition pushed against you, the more your protection intensified. Every attack they launched announced your value to the spiritual dimension. You do not coordinate that much effort against someone who does not matter. You do not sustain that much negative energy against someone who poses no real threat. Every move they made against you was a declaration that you were powerful enough to require extraordinary opposition. And every time that declaration went out, reinforcement came in on your side. You were never fighting this alone. You were at the front of the advance, and there was an entire force behind you that the opposition never knew existed. There is a line in the spiritual order of things, a boundary that once crossed activates a response that cannot be negotiated, bribed, delayed, or escaped. And the people who came against you, in their arrogance and their desperation, and their absolute refusal to accept that they were not going to win, crossed that line. They went after sacred things. They did not just come for you personally, they came for your bloodline. They came for the generational wealth written into your lineage before any of them were ever born. They tried to reach into something ancient, something that was established before they ever had a voice in any of it, and redirect it for their own purposes. They tried to steal a birthright that was never theirs to touch. They tried to block something the universe itself had already authorized. You've probably noticed a lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have stopped publishing, videos pulled, voices silenced. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. That's exactly why I'm putting you onto something real, Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching Chosen Ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation, and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition, and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. Join Destiny Engine to support your favorite channels and use it for your own rise. It's a 360 win. Start your Destiny Engine for $7 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. When anyone does that, the response is not proportional. The response is total. It is not just one person being defended at that point. It is every ancestor in your line responding to an assault on everything they suffered to build. It is the divine order correcting a violation against its own plan, and it moves not as a mild lesson but as a complete and absolute reckoning. The opposition believed they were targeting one person. They did not understand they were actually targeting an entire lineage that had been building toward this moment across generations. That was the final mistake, and it was the one that made everything that followed inevitable. Up until that point, there was still a window, a moment where they could have pulled back, let things be, chosen to stop before the point of no return, but they did not stop. They escalated, they doubled down, they went further than they ever should have gone. And the force that was quietly protecting you from the background stepped fully into the foreground. The ancestors stopped watching, they started moving. Think about the different areas of your life where things went sideways around the same time. The financial disruptions that appeared out of nowhere, the relationship damage that seemed to materialize without a traceable cause, the doors that closed without explanation, the opportunities that vanished right as they were beginning to form. You probably processed those as separate misfortunes, but they were not separate, they were coordinated. Different hands were involved, but they were all pushing in the same direction against you. Some people in that network were the ones who controlled the narrative about you. They were in spaces you were not present in, saying things about your character, your reliability, and your emotional state that were not true. They were contaminating perception before you even arrived, closing doors from the inside before you could reach them from the outside. Others were positioned to intercept what was forming for you. They placed themselves right where your opportunities were gathering so they could subtly redirect those opportunities away from you. They introduced just enough doubt into just the right conversations that things which should have opened for you stayed closed a little longer. You may have had no visible conflict with these people, but they were doing their part in something you could not see the full shape of. And there were those whose role was to keep the network itself fueled. They held the bitterness alive when it started to exhaust itself. They reminded the others what they were working toward when the mission began to feel pointless. Jealousy is an exhausting emotion to sustain over time. Maintaining that much negative energy against another person requires constant reinforcement, and this network had people who provided exactly that. But here is what networks built on bitterness cannot survive, and that is failed results. The moment the shared mission stops producing outcomes, the loyalty between participants dissolves, the blame starts, the suspicion turns inward. People who were previously unified begin suspecting each other of failing the mission, and a structure built on jealousy has no real foundation to hold itself together when the pressure redirects inward. That is exactly what is happening now on the other side. Your ascension is becoming undeniable, the opposition is fracturing from within, and the ancestors are watching every piece of it come apart. Going after someone's bloodline, going after the generation that comes after them, going after what was meant to be inherited, that is a spiritual debt that does not simply return, it returns compounded. It returns carrying the full weight of the violation, and the weight of coming against a chosen one's lineage is one of the heaviest debts the spiritual economy allows. Some of the people who came against you are already feeling the return in their bodies. That unexplained heaviness that will not lift no matter what they do, that persistent anxiety with no identifiable source, that sleep that does not fully restore them, that constant sense that something is slightly wrong, even when everything on the surface appears fine. The body registers what the mind tries to rationalize away. Right now their bodies are presenting the bill in full. Some of them are watching their carefully constructed plans disintegrate piece by piece. The security they thought they had is showing cracks in places they did not expect. The relationships they counted on are straining under pressure they cannot explain. The stability they believed was guaranteed is behaving in ways that defy their expectations. The very energy they used to try to destabilize your life is now destabilizing theirs. That is not coincidence. That is the spiritual law of return operating with surgical precision. And some of them are watching you rise. They cannot stop themselves from watching. They are tracking your trajectory, observing what is opening up in your life, and the rage of it, the absolute inability to accept that after everything they invested in your destruction, you are still ascending, is consuming them from the inside. They positioned themselves for a front row seat to your collapse. Instead, they have a front row seat to your arrival. There is no peace available in that position. There is no closure when the person you tried to bury is the person who keeps climbing into the light. That is the specific texture of karma when it is accurate. It does not deliver random suffering. It delivers the mirror image of exactly what was sent out. What they tried to do to you is now happening to them, and the ancestors are not finished. What is unfolding now is the beginning of the accounting, not the conclusion. When the first wave of efforts did not work, they escalated. They went looking for more power and more ways to reach into your life and cause damage. They invested real resources into strategies that were supposed to be guaranteed to work. They were told it would work. They paid for it. They waited, and it did not work. Every escalation they attempted was met with something stronger on your side. Here is what they could not understand. The more extreme their methods became, the louder the announcement they were making to the spiritual realm about your value. You do not go to extraordinary lengths to stop someone ordinary. You do not spend that kind of resource trying to dismantle someone who was never a real threat. Every move they made against you was a broadcast, and what that broadcast said was, this person carries something powerful enough to require extraordinary measures to defeat. And every time that broadcast reached the spiritual dimension, your protection intensified in direct proportion to their effort. They were unknowingly funding your ascension with every attempt they made at your collapse. Every resource they spent against you was a resource they no longer had available for their own lives. They were depleting their own spiritual and practical reserves, trying to drain yours, and they were losing the exchange every single time. The energy they put in motion against you had to land somewhere, because energy does not disappear. When that energy could not reach you because your protection held it off, it returned to the source. That is why the disruption they are experiencing now feels so personal and so precise. It is specific because it is returning to the exact coordinates from which it was launched. They built that unraveling themselves. They packaged it, addressed it, and sent it out into the world. The ancestors simply made sure the delivery arrived at the correct door. You did not have to do a single thing to make that happen. You just had to stay in motion and stay in alignment. The rest executed itself. You carry gifts, specific, lineage-backed, God-given gifts. Your ability to perceive things that other people do not perceive showed up in you from the time you were young. You can sense something is wrong before there is any visible evidence to point to. You can pick up on energy that other people walk right past without registering. Your intuition has never actually lied to you, even during the stretches when you talked yourself out of listening to it. That is not a personality quirk. That is an inheritance. That is something your lineage worked for and passed down specifically so that someone in the bloodline would arrive fully equipped to handle exactly the season you are in now. Those gifts were deposited in you for a purpose, and the people who came against you understood that purpose, even in the moments when you did not fully understand it yourself. A chosen one who fully trusts those gifts becomes someone who cannot be manipulated, someone who cannot be redirected away from their path, someone who cannot be kept from their destiny through planted confusion or sustained interference. Your opposition needed you to distrust yourself above all else. They needed you to second-guess your own perception. They needed you to feel like the thing that made you powerful was actually the thing that made you a problem to everyone around you. So they told you that you were too sensitive. They told you that you were too intense, too much, paranoid, overreacting, seeing things that were not there. They labeled your gifts as liabilities, so you would voluntarily suppress the very tools that were protecting you. And for a period of time it worked. For a period, you carried your gifts quietly, apologetically, operating at half capacity. Gifts like yours do not stay dormant indefinitely. They push against suppression until the internal pressure becomes undeniable. And every attempt the opposition made to contain you actually increased that internal pressure until the containment became impossible to maintain. They were accelerating your awakening while believing they were preventing it. You went through all of that, and you did not become bitter. You endured all of that, and you kept your heart open. That is not a small thing. That is the exact quality that qualifies you to receive what is coming. Abundance does not arrive for people who have closed themselves off. Destiny does not deliver to people who hardened into something unrecognizable under pressure. You stayed recognizable. You stayed yourself. And that is the entire reason every door is opening now. At some point, something in you said enough. It may not have felt like power when it happened. It may have felt like loss. It may have felt like walking away from something you should have stayed to fight. People around you may have questioned the decision. You may have questioned it yourself, but you listened to something operating at a level deeper than logic, deeper than emotion, deeper than what your eyes could confirm. You listened to the guidance that said this place is not your place, these people are not your people, your destiny does not live here. Move, and you moved. That decision was the hinge point, because the moment you removed yourself from the environment that was being used as the primary vehicle for attacks against you, the protection that had always been present could finally function without obstruction. Everything that was always meant to reach you could arrive without being rerouted. The opportunities, the resources, the connections that were always positioned to meet you could finally make contact without interference jamming the signal. And you started to feel the shift. Gradually at first, something that had been sealed began to open. Something that had been strained began to stabilize. A resource appeared from a direction you were not expecting, and your first instinct was to attribute it to timing, to coincidence, to things simply working themselves out on their own. That was not timing. That was the divine order reclaiming what belonged to you the moment the obstacle was no longer blocking the path. And while your life was beginning to open up, something was happening on the other side of that move. The people who had invested everything in your destruction began to feel the return of what they sent out. Their carefully arranged plans started coming undone. The situations they thought were secured started behaving in ways they did not anticipate. The stability they had taken for granted started showing fractures in places they had never thought to reinforce. They started getting nervous. And that nervousness is its own form of justice, because deep down they know, they can feel the shift. They can feel that the outcome of the war they were certain they were winning has changed direction in a way they did not plan for and cannot reverse. They cannot call it back. They cannot renegotiate the terms. The ancestors received the full account of everything that was done, and the response is already in motion. This is not revenge. This is the universe enforcing its own law, and the accounting always arrives exactly when it is supposed to. Not everyone who participated in your opposition did so visibly. Some were strategic about keeping themselves invisible. They contributed to the damage from what they calculated was a safe distance. They kept their fingerprints off the most obvious acts, while still playing an active role in the collective effort against you. They smiled at you publicly, maintained the appearance of neutrality, and quietly did their part in private. They believed that distance would insulate them. They believed that staying in the background placed them outside the reach of what was being returned. They were wrong. The ancestors do not operate on incomplete information. They do not only see what is visible to the human eye, they see motive, They see the private decisions made in private moments. They see the choice to stay silent when speaking up would have helped you. They see the choice to pass information along while claiming to be neutral. They see every hand that participated in this, whether that hand was raised openly or kept hidden behind the back. Every participant is known, every name is on the record, every action has been accounted for. Silence in evil is not innocence. Passing information along while claiming neutrality is not neutrality. Enabling visible harm while keeping your own hands technically clean is still participation in the harm. The ancestors make no distinction between the loudly guilty and the quietly guilty. The reckoning reaches every single one of them. It just arrives in different forms depending on the role each person played. You can stop wondering about the ones who seem too removed to be affected. They are not removed. They are already on the receiving end of what is coming. The response is arriving on its own schedule in ways that are specifically calibrated to reach each one of them. And you cannot prepare for what you cannot see coming. They did not see this coming. Now let's talk about you, because this is the part that determines how you carry everything that is about to arrive in your life. No more apologizing for what you carry. No more qualifying your gifts to make other people more comfortable with your presence. No more dimming yourself so that people who are threatened by what you carry can feel at ease around you. That season is closed. It served its purpose, but kept you protected during a time when full visibility was a liability. But that time is behind you now, and you are standing in a completely different season. The posture of this season is authority. Not arrogance, authority. The kind that belongs to someone who knows exactly what they carry and has zero confusion about where they are going. The kind that belongs to someone who has been through a sustained assault on their finances, their relationships, their lineage, and their peace, and came through the other side not only intact but sharper, clearer, and more aligned than before. Your discernment is a weapon now. The very gifts they tried to make you suppress are now fully awake and operating at a level that makes you essentially unmanipulable. You know what manipulation feels like from the inside. You know what coordinated opposition looks like from the outside. You know the difference between someone who is genuinely in your corner and someone performing that role to gain access to what you are building. That knowledge is armor, and it is armor they helped you build by teaching you exactly what they were doing through the experience of surviving it. Move through every space like that. Make decisions from that foundation. Speak from that foundation. Build from that foundation. What you carry now is not ego. It is the accumulated authority of every battle you chose to stay present for, when leaving would have been easier. It is every moment you trusted your own perception when the opposition was working hard to make you doubt it. It is every time you kept going when everything around you was saying stop. You earned this posture. Wear it without apology. And protecting your energy going forward is not about building a wall. It is about operating a gate. You get to decide who has earned entry. You get to determine who has demonstrated the kind of loyalty that earns proximity to what you are building. Not everyone who shares blood with you deserves access to your vision. Not everyone who calls themselves close has actually shown up for you the way that closeness requires. You have every right to be selective about who gets close to what you are carrying. That selectivity is not coldness. It is wisdom earned through experience. The generational wealth that was blocked, rerouted, and delayed is moving now. Everything that was held back is accelerating into arrival all at once. Every door that interference kept closed is opening because the interference has been cleared away. Every resource that was redirected away from you is finding its way back. The pieces of your destiny are moving into position with a speed and a precision that carries a completely different quality than anything you have experienced before in your life. You can feel it already. Something has shifted in the energy surrounding your life. Opportunities are appearing from directions you were not actively tracking. People are showing up who seem to already understand what you are building and why it matters. Connections are forming that feel less like coincidence and more like deliberate design. That is because they are deliberate design. That is your lineage clearing the path and delivering what it has been holding in reserve for you. Take it, walk into it fully. Every single part of it belongs to you. The abundance coming to you is not arriving quietly or privately. It is arriving in a way that is visible to the very people who tried to prevent it. It is arriving in a way that directly contradicts every false narrative that was built around your name. Every person who worked to paint you as incapable, as unstable, as someone who could not make it, is going to have to witness you arrive in your fullness in a way that makes everything they said impossible to sustain. That is the divine specific form of justice. Not just that you receive what was always yours, but that you receive it in a way that speaks louder than every lie that was told about you. Your success becomes the living correction of the record. You do not have to defend yourself. You do not have to explain anything to anyone. You simply have to show up as exactly what you are, and what you are will answer every question that was ever raised about you. They were present in every moment that felt like it was going to be the one that finally ended you, and they are present now as you step into everything they prayed someone in this bloodline would finally reach. They are grateful. Not in the passive way we sometimes imagine gratitude to be. They are actively, intensely grateful that you did not let what was done to you turn you into something unrecognizable. They are grateful that you kept your heart open through circumstances that had no business leaving a heart open. They are grateful that you chose again and again, even when the harder path was the right path, to stay connected to the truth of who you are. They want you to know that they handled it. Every attack that was sent against you, that should have landed but didn't. Every path that was opening toward harm, that you were steered away from just in time. Every moment where the opposition had you in their sight, and something moved you just out of range. That was not luck, that was handled. They were there. They never left your side for a single moment of any of this, not even the moments when it felt most like you were completely alone in it. And they want you to know that everything belonging to you has been released. Every door that interference held shut is now open. Every resource that was redirected away from you is being returned. Every inheritance that was meant to flow through your hands is arriving. The lineage does not forget what is owed to its own. The people who came against you, who reached into something sacred and tried to redirect it, who went after your bloodline as if it belonged to them, the ancestors know each one of them. They know what was done. They know who was present, who was hidden, and who enabled the damage from a distance. The accounting already in motion comes from a place that holds every detail without exception. Nothing was missed. Everything was witnessed. The ancestors do not collect debts in half measures. What was planned in darkness is surfacing now. What was done in secret is being uncovered. The foundation that the opposition built their security on cannot hold, because it was constructed on what they stole, what they damaged, and what they tried to corrupt. And foundations built on stolen things always eventually give way. You do not have to chase any of this. You do not have to monitor it. The justice is executing entirely on its own. Your only assignment is to be in position, fully present, fully awake, fully aligned, and ready to receive everything that is moving toward you right now. You grew, not despite the darkness, but through it. The very poison they introduced into your environment became the exact nutrient that activated something in you that gentler conditions never would have reached. The pressure they applied became the precise force needed to crack you open into your full form. The opposition they organized against you became the resistance that built you into something their opposition could no longer contain. They set out to bury a seed. They ended up irrigating a dynasty. And that dynasty, which is you and everything you are building and everything your lineage is carrying forward through you, is now standing fully visible, fully rooted, extending into a legacy that will outlast every person who invested in its prevention. You were chosen before you arrived. That was determined by something operating above the level of human preference or human interference. No amount of jealousy, no amount of coordination, no amount of sustained attack changes what the divine has already sealed. The opposition could not change it. The only thing they managed to do was confirm it. because a chosen one requires opposition to become fully forged. Every great lineage requires the chapter where everything tried to stop the advancement and failed. That is what this season was. That is the role the opposition played without understanding the role they were playing. They were the resistance that revealed your resilience. They were the darkness that proved your light was real, and now you walk forward carrying all of it, not as damage but as a crown. Everything your lineage prayed for is activating. Everything you were always meant to have is arriving. Every generational pattern that needed to break is breaking. Every person who comes after you is inheriting a different foundation because you were willing to endure this season and come through it, transformed rather than destroyed. And the people who tried to prevent all of it, they are as good as dead for what they pulled. The ancestors have their address, karma has the full receipt, and you, chosen one, have everything you were always supposed to have. Can't stop, won't stop. The lineage already decided, and what the lineage decides cannot be